What's up YouTube, Linux Fan Man here, and today we're going to have a look at the Apple IIe computer. So released in 1983 to basically replace the Apple Plus computer that was out during the time. It actually had a pretty long run. It went all the way until 1993. In fact, it was the longest running Apple II computer of the series, between the original Apple II, the Apple II Plus, the C, and the GS. I think they all had like maybe 5 or 6 years at the most. This one had 10 years. So this was the most successful out of the line. But what it did is actually was the enhanced chipset. That's why it's called the E. Essentially, it had the ability to have all the ASCII characters instead of just a few. It also could go into ultra high resolution and ultra low resolution graphics. It had the ability to do 40 and 80 column text columns, and had the a new chip in it too. I believe it's called the MMU. And what that did was essentially work with the memory. It was basically took the place of all the TTL logic that was on the board, and just put it on a chip. So made it a little bit more cost efficient for Apple to produce. It was their own chip, so they actually produced it in-house. Now the funny thing is that the processor in this is actually a 1.023 megahertz processor. It's the 6502 MOS, which is basically the processor that Commodore was making for the Commodore 64, sort of. It's a variant of it. But the funny thing is here, and I don't know if it's just a coincidence or not, so the Apple II the Apple IIe was the last Apple II computer to run until 1993. Shortly after that, the Commodore 64 was stopped being made in 1994. So, and then shortly after that, Commodore went out of business. So I don't know if Apple was actually helping Commodore stay in business during that time frame or not, but without them using the 6502 processor from MOS, that might have been another factor. But anyway, let's go ahead and go back here and take a look at this computer. So everybody knows the Apple II and its iconic shape here. Basically, it was meant to put a monitor in the disk drives up here and the monitor on top if you have the dual disk drive setup. This is only a single disk drive setup. So, but anyway, so let's take a little deeper look into it. So it has ventilation vents here on the sides, and if we look here in the back, I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot of light here, guys. Here's where the disk drive actually plugs in. I think it's like a DIN 25 connector or something like that. This is your composite video out. Here's your joystick. Right here, your joystick port. And these two little 3.5 millimeter, looks like audio jacks. I can't really focus. Those are for the cassette, one's for in and one's for out. And obviously you have your power here, and you have a whole ton of little ports you can open up for your cards, for any kind of peripherals that you had. So let's open this thing up. Alright guys, so essentially here you got your power supply. This here is a memory expansion card. So what this does is it increases it up to 128K of RAM. This is an additional 64K on top of what is actually on here, which those are the RAM chips right there. This here is the video ROM. So that's basically like the character ROM on a Commodore 64. So it stores all the characters and everything inside of it. Right here, that's the 6502 processor right there. So that's the MOS processor. Now these two chips here you see with the stripes on them, those are Apple branded chips. One's the MMU, which is the memory management unit, which basically takes over the TTL logic that was on like the
old Apple II boards back in the day. So it replaced all those extra components that they had to have on the board and just replaced it with the one chip here. And then the IOU is the input-output unit, which basically controls a lot of the input outputs. Basically like the disk controllers, which would be this card here. Also the cassette, the keyboard. Has a lot of ASCII functions. These two deal with a lot of ASCII functions as well. So, and that's pretty much, the Apple II in a nutshell here. You got all these expansion ports here that you can plug in, like the super serial card, and of course the disk cards, maybe even like a LAN card you can put in there. And then this is the aux port right here, or the aux connector, where you put your memory expansion. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and fire this thing up, and I'll show you it boot up and everything. Alright guys, and here is the Apple IIe booting up. Now as you notice, when it boots up, it actually says Apple IIe. If you boot up an Apple and it says anything other than Apple IIe, then it doesn't have the enhanced chipset, which basically gives it more ASCII characters, gives you the ability to go into the 40 column display. It has like the MMU chip that I was telling you about that replaces the TTL logic that was actually on the board. There's one more other thing that it did. Oh, it gave you ultra high resolution graphics as well. As funny as that is, there's 4 graphics modes on there. There's low, high, like ultra low and ultra high. It's basically the difference between going between the 40 character and 80 character is what the ultra highs are. So to get out of this screen, because it just keeps spinning the disk drive down here because it doesn't have a disk in it to load, just press Control and reset, and it'll actually take you into basic mode here. So I just typed in a little easy program here, just print hello world on the screen. Go ahead and hit run. And there we go. Now it'll just go into an endless loop until you press Control Reset. So let me do that. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and boot something else up in here. So I have not done this yet since I got this Apple, but I do have, this is my old software from when I used to have an Apple. And I have Apple IIe Diagnostics. So I have a disk specifically for this. So it's kind of like that Commodore 64 diagnostic cartridge. So it just basically checks all the systems within the computer. So let's go ahead and boot that up real quick. Alright, so that diagnostic disk is now booting. So let's go ahead and execute all diagnostic tests. Main logic board and RAM test. So we'll just sit through these and see what it does. I'm kind of curious. It's been a long time since I ran this. So anyway guys, the Apple II computer, I don't know about you guys, but I had quite the history with this computer. So this is basically what I used in school all the way through elementary through high school. My senior year of high school when we finally got Macintoshes. So this was the computer that I learned to do a lot of things on. I learned how to program in BASIC, Pascal, I forgot what else. A little bit of machine code on this, assembly language, but not too much of that. Learned how to use AppleWorks. First time I networked computers was on these kind of computers with the super serial cards. So it was really pretty cool. But I am not an Apple II fan, and that is simply because these computers here, testing this, it's only got a little sound speaker inside there too, and that's one of the reasons why I don't like the Apple, is simply because it is not what you would consider a gaming machine back in the day. This was more of a business computer or school computer. It did not have the ability to register sprites like the Commodore 64 or the Ataris did, or any of those kind of computers did back in the day. So far it's actually passing all the tests here. Character generator test. Now it looks a little flaky on this because it's on a LCD TV instead of a CRT, but it's working like it should. Alright guys, and this looks like it was the 80 column test. Remember how I told you it went from 40 to 80 columns in the Apple IIe, so this is showing that it can go into 80 columns and 40 columns. This is just checking page memory. This is a high resolution graphics test. And then double high resolution. This is what I was talking about. So it actually is per pixel on this. Now this looks horrible on this display because, like I said, it's an LCD and not a CRT monitor. Where original Apple CRT monitor would look great. Keyboard test. So this is testing all the keys to make sure they work, except for the ones that are already shaded, I should say. And it looks like they all work. Now the shift key is one of the keys that you don't have to hit, but that's the one that is broken on this keyboard. It makes it kind of a pain to type sometimes. Alright, here we go. Control C, it says. Alright. Joystick paddle test. So this is just checking all the different positions and registers. And then the buttons. Yep, all works. Alright, so finish the test. Alright, let's go ahead and boot up something else. Alright guys, so we're just booting up a game disc that I made a while back. Let's see, Linux Fan Man presents Classic Mix 1, Pac-Man, Galaxians, Kuiper Curse, and Moon Patrol. Now Kuiper Curse is a game that I created. I've done it on so many different systems. I made it for the 2600 I was working on it on the Commodore, never finished it. In fact, in my Maxi video, I showed the version of it there. And then I made one on here as well on the Apple. Now this is really basic graphics, but let's go ahead and load it just to see what it looks like. Alright guys, so yeah, this is a game I made a while back here. Gonna load up. There it is. I think when I was doing my YouTube videos back in the day, I made this game. Yeah, 2011, you know. So let's play it. So you're just shipped down here and you just gotta shoot these asteroids that are coming down at you. And as the levels grow, this land keeps going up further and further up the screen, so it makes it harder. So it becomes a pretty intense game after a while. Yeah, kind of hard for me to play because it's a keyboard game. So let's go ahead and boot up another game here. Now what I'm booting up now is Jungle Hunt, guys. This is an original Atari game. Well, it's not an original, it's a copy, but it was made for the Apple IIe. But as you guys can kind of see, the graphics aren't all that great. So let's go to like Joystick. Are we in joystick mode? I hope so. Yep. Okay, start. So there we are. Now on this screen you can't really see it. Oop. But you see how slow it is, guys? These games are just horribly slow. And the graphics just ain't the best. I mean, let's face it, without having sprites back in the 80s, it was hard to make a video game and make one that was good, graphically at least. Not saying that the Apple didn't have some good video games. But anyway, guys, this about sums it up. I just kind of wanted to show you some things, show you the inside of the Apple and kind of show you the chips and all that good stuff. Now, when this originally released, I think it released for like $1,300 for just this, not the disk drive, not the monitor, just the computer itself, without the expansion card or the disk drive card. So in today's economy with inflation and everything, that would be, I looked it up, I think it's like $3,700 just for this, and that's it. So a good reason why a lot of people didn't own these, but owned Commodore 64s and Atari, like the Atari 8-bit line computers as well back in the day, simply because these were just way too expensive for the normal person to afford. Now, obviously, if your parents were rich back in those days, they could probably afford one of these, but most normal middle-class people, not so much. But anyway, guys, I just wanted to go ahead and say go ahead and like, subscribe, and comment down below. Y'all have a good one. Peace out.